All right, welcome everybody for this new recap of the day using Visor. Today we are going to look at the Nasdaq future, so the NQ contract, okay? As there was some very interesting setup, especially in the early session that I wanted to showcase you, still based on the previous video that I made, but this time with slight variation. All right, so let's keep it simple. We have the GEX chart based on volume here, as you can see. Here we have the heat map based on the open interest. Here we have the gamma exposure based on the open interest as well. And here we have the ATM straddle. So first of all, a bit of context. We are currently 2 minutes before the open. We can see that we open on the positive upside. On the upside, we open on the gap up. Here is the high end of the expected move. We can see the ATM IV is quite high, but at the moment it doesn't really tell me anything because the market hasn't opened, okay? Even though we are looking at the future and it quotes overnight, at the moment this is not really helpful, but still interesting to monitor. I would just like you to see the volatility spread in addition of the VRP. We can see that we are quite cheap in terms of the pricing of the option at the moment, and the historical volatility is slightly overshooting the IV. This is not necessarily unusual, but it's not the most common context to work with. We could expect a mean reversion where the HV would drop below the IV, like it's the case most of the time. So that's also an interesting thing to notice, because if this was to be the case, it would translate into a slowdown of the price amplitude and volatility in the day, and probably a slight grind to the upside, okay? We can see here that the expected move of the day is 521 points. That's a lot. It's not the biggest amount of point that we see for NQ, but it's to consider as a big expected move, all right? Okay, let's close this panel and keep it very simple. Okay. So context of the moment just before the open, we see that we are above the 0 gamma line per volume. We have a big volume cluster just here at 30,000, expected move just above, and another big cluster at 29,500. If we look at the open interest, this is the biggest negative cluster of the day, translating here by this huge red area on the heat map. Now, let's see what happened at the open. So the open now has gone by 5 minutes. We see that we are rising to the upside and we are entering the area of transition between positive and negative cluster based on the open interest. We see that we are very positive on the exposure, so we could expect a fade of this area. Also, the volatility is going down. That's an interesting also thing to look, but we'll keep track on that just after. Let's continue. And indeed, we fade this call wall here resistance to drop back to the 0 gamma line. Now, interestingly enough, we see two bounces here on the exposure chart. That's telling me that if we continue to the positive side of thing, it wouldn't be stupid to take a long on this point, targeting maybe this huge cluster of 30,000, or maybe before that 900 cluster, as it's the closest positive area. Let's say we can increase a bit the sensitivity to see that positive line here, okay? And the biggest cluster, that would be 30,000 here. If we look in the volume, it's even more, sorry, not here, just here. If we look at the volume, it's even more easy to witness. But let's keep the open interest for now. All right, so here wouldn't be bad to take a long, especially if you see like that we are gaining back the positive territory. Another interesting thing to look is here. You can see that even though we are dropping by more than 100 points, the volatility rising is not even close to the high, okay? So this high is just after the open. It can be a bit noisy, but here, what the volatility tells you is basically that at the moment, the pricing doesn't justify a break by another 100 or 200 points to the downside. You would need to see quite a spike here in order to anticipate that. So buying here, securing just below, wouldn't be stupid at all. Let's see what happens. And indeed, we just bounce to reach again the 900 level. So that's already a 100 point trade, sorry, on the Nasdaq, not bad at all. And you see that we are getting back positive territory. That could be a nice exit. Let's see what happened after. We reject again, but then we straight after just bounce back and try to break this area. This is the moment that you don't want to FOMO, because you can expect a bit of chop in the transition area like this. But what you could expect though is that if you lose or if you didn't took the first trade, even though it was very clear, it can happen quite fast. So sometime during the open we prefer to step aside, which is not stupid at all. But now let's look for another pullback maybe, because you see that the volatility is going down, we are building positive exposure. So in an environment like that, you want to buy the lows and fade the highs. Okay, so if we continue a bit, you see that we enter that negative cluster, and just before reaching that volume we fade and come back to the positive call wall. Okay, here buying again to target that huge cluster here isn't stupid neither. You are buying the low and you will fade the high as a target maybe for exiting your trade. Okay, let's see what happened after. Exactly that. You see the price bounce, reached the 30,000 by a few points of overshooting, and then fades the level. So just by looking at few panels here, you can see that the volatility is going down, the exposure is building positively. You have huge information here, basically straight before the open even. Like you knew that level was a huge target before the open, even though we were like about 200 points below. Okay, and just by seeing that positive call wall and that zero gamma line, you had two beautiful entry points. Okay, I replay it and we check a beautiful entry point, a beautiful exit, a bit of noise trapping the people that have a problem of FOMO, you know, and then overshooting the price, pullbacking on that line, breaking to the 30,000 and fading that level again. So as you can see, a lot of noise, but two beautiful entries and 200 points of trade on the Nasdaq, which isn't bad at all. And just with that tiny setups and understanding like one of the most common regime basis on equities like NQ, SPX and stuff like that would have give you two beautiful trades for the day. And basically you don't need more than that. So yeah, I hope that was clear and that I give you some information about how to approach a day like today and how to map a bit your environment using Visor and naive gamma exposure assumptions. Even though this is naive, it's still very helpful. As you can see, it's not pixel perfect, but it's quite already helpful. So yeah, hope this was indeed helpful for you, and I'll see you in the next one. Happy trading and take care.